Hey guys, welcome to Launchpad Podcast. Before we get started, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Launchpad Pod, on our website, launchpadpod.com. Let us know what's going on. I've been talking to some of you. I appreciate it when you guys hit us up. Tell us how full of shit we are and that the movies we watch suck. No, it's been fun. It's been good Discord. I think it's funny because I post something. I was like, I've been watching these movies, and somebody hit me up and they're like, those suck. You should watch these instead. And they're not wrong, but also it's funny. It's fun. Also, I like, it's great to hear from you guys. Thanks to people who've been watching the YouTube, especially the people who love wrestling.
Are those numbers still climbing?
Dude, we get like 6,000 views a week on that shit. It's like, it's out of control. Like, I wish I could monetize it. We'd be
Maybe
rich.
we're in the wrong business. Maybe
I know.
we should be talking about sports we don't know anything about.
Yeah, next week we are now a female wrestling podcast. Because apparently it does way better than whatever we're doing. Social media, hit us up. Man, it's been a while. I'm excited to talk to you this week.
Yeah, it has. And it's like, this is an outlet for me. I need this every week. Although you caught me on my one day this year that I'm like, I have no reason that I need to get out of bed. So I'm not. I told Amanda, like, Amanda's got the baby today. There's nothing that I had to get fixed or doing anything this morning. So I was like, I'm not getting out of bed. Yeah. And then I last minute was like, fuck it. I can do the podcast from bed. So I still got my little PJs on. I brought my sign in.
Yeah. Hey, it's good. It's good.
This is where the magic happens, ladies, for all our female listeners and gay members who have good taste.
Let's just get on with the show.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, welcome to the Launchpad Podcast. I'm Aaron.
Matt,
we're doing a little catch up, man. It's been a while. I've read some stuff. I read a comic book that that comic book's like 30 years old. I'm like, yeah, but I want to talk about it now. I've been watching some movies. Have you seen the Batman yet?
No, it's on my list of things to do ASAP, and I just
Roomy, you're getting into that territory where I'm just going to have to spoil it for you. No, you know what? I'm going to do it even worse. I'm going to podcast cuck you. I'm going to get somebody else to come on here and talk about it with me, and you're going to have to watch.
No, don't do that. I'll go watch it.
You're going to have to be on the Zoom muted and just watch me talk about it with someone else. That's how this is going to work. You son of a bitch.
Did you just watch it, or did you watch it a while ago?
I watched it a while ago. I've been dying to talk about it.
The problem, I fell into two holes with that. One was Amanda said, "Oh, I'd watch that." So you're like, okay.
This is what you do, yeah.
But it's not really her fault for that, because then there's we've also now hit the time where I know better because we've been married so long that I'm like, listen, at this point, if I have the time to watch it, I'm going to do it without you. I'll invite you. If you're in, you're in. If not, later. But the problem is the movie's fucking 3 hours long, and I don't know that I've had in the last 2 months 3 hours of Matt time.
Yeah, and 3 hours that you want to pay attention. Can I say things that aren't spoilery? Is it even possible?
If you need to, you can. But
all right. On one,
give me another week.
Okay, I will say this. On one hand, I feel like I've been needful things about Batman. Like Stephen King opened up a shop, and I walked in, and I was like, I just want Batman to return to his roots and become a detective. I don't want him to be an Iron Man ripoff. And they're like, haha, wish granted. But then I had to also find out what the dark side of that wish was. And they're like, you're also going to get a real mopey ass Bruce Wayne. I was like, no. So part of me, I'm watching them, I'm like, this is my favorite Batman movie ever. And then I'm like, I fucking hate this fucking version of Bruce Wayne. And it's nobody's fault. Look, I don't think the actor did a bad job. I think it's just the choice that they made and ran with it. At least be consistent. But it's kind of like, people who are like, George Clooney's my favorite Batman. You're like, okay, but at least he did it, and he did it consistently. That was a choice he made, and George Clooney wasn't a bad actor doing it, but that was his choice, and he stuck with it. And okay, that's not the version for me, but it's out there, and they did it. Good for them. So we'll get into Batman at some point.
All right. Batman is a big summer thing for me. Like for me, I have very strong memories and feelings associated with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin going in. Like those were big. Like if I remember correctly, they released right about the time school let out for the summer.
At least a couple times a year, Matt will send me a voice memo, which is always weird because I'm like, did he just pocket voice memo me? It seems like something an old man would do. And it's him screaming, "Kiss from a rose on the grave." Ooh, da, 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 da. And I'm just like, what the? Like, I'm in Home Depot and I'm like, oh shit, Matt just sent, oh my God, did something happen? Like, why would he send me a voice memo? And Kate's like, well, listen to it. Because I'm like, Matt's like, Rumi, I'm trapped in a well and I don't know how to send messages. And here it is. And it's him screaming, "Kiss from a rose." Oddly
enough, from a different Home Depot. They had it playing over the loudspeaker. I love that song. That soundtrack, and I'm not going to lie, the Batman and Robin soundtrack, while not nearly as good or iconic, it has a very sentimental place for me because I remember that summer.
I think we could do an entire episode on complete soundtrack, like the Godzilla soundtrack. Movies suck, but damn,
that would be good.
Like, how do we fix this song? Add Godzilla roars? Cool. Do it. P. Diddy, what you got? I got a couple of the members of Led Zeppelin. Dope. Throw it in there. Hey, Green Day, what do you got? We're like, the same song we've done a million times, but with Godzilla roars. Sweet. Throw that on there. And it's like, Jamiroquai, get something on here. And you're like,
run around this fucking movie theater as it's going underwater. You just step on the seats and shit. Oh, that's so good.
So good. Baller album. Rage Against the Machines? Hell yeah, get some Godzilla in there. Like, I fucking love that Godzilla album. I mean, same thing, Batman Forever. Holy shit, what a soundtrack. Great album. Everybody had it. I mean, come on.
That movie wasn't as bad as Batman and Robin. And Batman and Robin soundtrack is not as good, but Batman and Robin soundtrack is still a lot of fun for me. At least half of it is.
I've recently watched Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, like back-to-back weekends with Kevin and Meg, my brother and sister-in-law. And Batman Forever, I think, is still a good movie because it found that slice of camp that worked.
Sure.
And Batman Forever pushed it over the edge.
No, Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin. Yes, Batman Forever found the perfect slice where camp worked and it still works as a cool movie. And I was young enough to be like, fucking cool. And then when I watched it again, I was like, it's still pretty fucking cool. Batman and Robin tipped the scale to too campy, but I had a good time watching it.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I watched it, I was like, this is god awful. And it's like, it's a very interesting thing because it's like, well, we didn't change the formula. And you're like, you did a little bit.
Yeah, there's something in here that wasn't in the last batch.
I mean, yeah, it's literally, they're like, hey, we liked how like cheesy this last one was. Let's amp that up a little bit. And you're like, didn't work. Also, nobody seems to want to be in this movie. Except for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. He's having a great time. And at the end of the day, like, it's more fun. It's aged deliciously, like in being so awful. Yeah. But like when you watch them back to back, you're like, how could Forever work so well while still being cheesy and weird? And then the follow up being just almost like sank the franchise, but it still was the same formula. It's very interesting.
That would be a fun episode to do. Is just deconstruct those two movies together, like separately and then together. Why did one work? Why did another work? Because I think we'd have a lot to talk about.
We would. What have you been watching, man? You got anything good? What have you been doing with your not 3 hours that you don't have?
Okay. I have a first ever on the Launchpad podcast ever, as far as I know, as far as a what have you been watching?
I'm excited. Tell me. Lay it on me.
My wife is a social worker at a middle school that was putting on a theatrical musical production of Beauty and the Beast. And we went last night. Oh, shit. It was rough. Like, as you're all being like, oh, wow, this 40-year-old man had to go to this school that he has no attachment to. I don't know the kids. I don't know the family. I don't know anything. And you're like, it's middle school. So how good could it have? it was so as bad as you think it was worse. It was okay.
Kids couldn't sing, pitchy as shit.
But you think that, like, you think that's going to be the case. There were characters that I couldn't believe as they locomotioned from one side of the stage to the other. I was like, I have trouble believing that you just walked across there. Amanda told me, my wife told me on the way there, she's like, the guy who was playing Gaston originally was really good, but he was fucking around in school, so they yanked him from the play. He wasn't allowed to do it. So they had to get a replacement Gaston. So they had to like coerce some kid to do it. And she's like, so he's not good. And I think they instructed him to kind of talk sing most of his songs. So I was like, okay, I understood that. That was their mistake because I didn't believe him talking. He could not sing for sure, but he could barely talk.
And you went to this not even for your kid. You're going to have to sit through tons of these, but your son will be there. So he'll be like, like everybody tells me this. And this is my biggest dread of parenting. Like, I didn't want to have children because I don't want to sit through their bullshit shows. Now I have one. I'm going to have to do it. Okay. And everybody's like, no, but it's your kid. So it's different. No, it's not. When they suck, they still suck. And I have to sit through their bullshit
on the way home because I feel like Gaston's parent, like, it was uncomfortable. You know, when you watch a shitty movie and like we make fun of it, but there are roles, actors in the movie or overall direction where it's so bad you're embarrassed for them. Like on an empathetic level, you are embarrassed. I felt so bad for this kid. And I was like, if his family is here, they have to know, like, nobody in the show was good. He was abysmal. And yes, for the record, I am ripping on a 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy right now, but like he looked like the goon football player in a sitcom that doesn't know anything. Like I've been watching Alf recently, and in Alf there's a goon football player who's tutored by the young girl in the show, and he like literally can't hold a conversation with her. The joke of it is he has trouble understanding her regular speech, let alone when they're talking about chemistry. That's what this guy seemed like. He couldn't hit a beat, like a comedic beat. The one who played LeFou was this little girl who was fantastic. And she was acting her tiny little ass off. And I think she was trying to carry every scene because he could do no lifting. And he like literally he had a bow, like a bow and arrow bow around his shoulder the whole time.
Yeah.
And he only used it once at the end. And I'm pretty sure that Tommy Wiseau water bottled him. And they're like, listen, you're terrible. Just fucking hold on to this bow. Like that's, you know, that's the whole thing. And that I did not hit her. I didn't do it. It's bullshit. And he throws the bottle. That whole thing like took them 1,000 takes in the room because he kept fucking it up. So some genius was like, you're a terrible actor. Just squeeze this bottle. And that helped him get through the shot. And that was the take that they used. That's what I think happened with this kid in this bow. They were like, here, just put this bow on you. He was terrible. I can't. His words didn't sound like words. And
was it everything you couldn't do to just like talk shit to your wife the whole time? You're like,
yes.
Like with
there
jokes?
were 2 or 3 times she leaned over and said something to me, but I was like, I don't know who's around us. And I seriously was like, how funny would it be, especially with COVID and the masks, if you went to a show like that with 2 or 3 people with earpieces and microphones so we could be whispering jokes to each other the whole time? And I was like, first of all, how evil is that to just shit on some little kids' stupid little show? But like the costumes are nice and, you know, they clearly were trying. The girl who played Belle was a good actress in terms of she looked like she was like, I'm this character Belle. I'm not a teenage girl. Pretty much every other kid was just like, I am the clock. I'm saying clock things. The candlestick guy was pretty good, but he only just had one little flourish that he just kept doing. But it was funny and it was cute. The Beast, they had this like essentially like a hood thing with the hair and the horns.
Yeah.
Big shaggy paws and big shaggy feet. But otherwise he was just wearing black slacks and a white dress shirt. and it made him look like a mad scientist, like he'd had an experiment that went awry. It was really weird, and I couldn't understand that. And
how old are these kids? Is it middle school?
Middle school. So it was and Amanda said they had some elementary school in there that actually were like some of the better kids. Oh. The girls who followed Gaston around, they were pretty good. Because you got to have a slight comedic timing to make some of those jokes land, right?
I in middle school I did a bunch of musicals and stuff and the plays and did all that stuff.
I'm telling you, as good as you think you did, you were terrible.
No. I knew we were, but we can top that on awkwardness. We did a show. It's like called One More Night in the Streets or something, and we knew it was edgy because when they were like, we want to put on this show, everybody was like, no. It's about prostitutes dying in the streets on drug overdoses and getting killed by their pimps and stuff at a Catholic school.
Was it a musical?
Yes. And they had to tone everything way, 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 way down. They toned it all down and they dialed it a lot back. But oh, no, these are middle schoolers putting on a show about prostitutes.
Were they still prostitutes or did they change it to be like Girl Scouts or something?
No, they were they took out the references to it, but you knew what they were doing.
There was a scene where you had to lean into a guy's car and ask him.
No, my character's name was Sino, and I sang like a country song, and that was like my one thing. I had a solo.
Do you remember the words?
No, I don't.
Really?
No, I was middle school, man. I barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Dude, I was in elementary school, and I was in Bye Bye Birdie, and I remember that shit.
Wow. I mean, we did some fun ones. We did do some fun ones, but yeah, that was ridiculous. And it was like, really? We're getting away with this? And I think it was one of the things where they're like, okay, they have toned it down to be acceptable for a middle school Catholic school audience. Nope. Everybody was outraged, just sheer outrage. It was great. Oh, so good. I've also always wanted to play LeFou in a version of. I missed my chance. I could have come out to LA.
You'd be LeFou. You'd be a good LeFou.
Oh, the voice. See, I always wanted to be. Yeah, Josh Gad. Fuck him. I could do that shit.
I think you could. And Gaston is like my favorite fucking character, certainly in that movie, but definitely he's high up there in Disney because I kind of can relate to him. He's pretty fucking cool.
He's a rapist.
No, he's not. He's a chauvinist. He's a chauvinist, and he clearly doesn't respect anybody except himself. But he can spit better than anybody.
And drink eggs. Do you drink eggs, Ruby? How many eggs did you have this week?
When I was a lad, I ate 5 dozen eggs. Yeah, I like the bravado of that character. He's a fun character, and this guy just murdered it. He was just like, and every last inch of me is covered in hair. Made no There was a part in that song where he flexes and all the people around him go, ooh. And then he turns the other way and he flexes and he, ooh. And then he takes a step towards the stage and knowingly looks at the crowd and then flexes both arms and people faint and shit. And he it was almost like they were like, hey kid, what are you doing for the next 14 minutes? And he's like, nothing. They were like, come in, we need you for this play. And he had never also seen the Disney version, which is what this was. It was the Disney version.
Right now, there's somebody listening to our podcast being like, I thought you guys were going to talk about Batman or something. Oh,
I thought you were going to say there's some kid, someone's listening and being like, my son didn't do that bad last night.
Yeah, they're like, and the first 20 minutes they talked about a musical at a grade school.
Then there's someone else. There's two listeners texting each other right now, and one of them's like, at least they're not talking about dicks. Well, before we move, because I have other stuff to tell you, and I want to hear what you want to say, but before we move away from this, I did have an idea. Talk about uncomfortable. The girl who plays the French maid looked like she could have been in your performance about the streetwalkers.
Oh God!
And
they're like, where can we get a French maid costume? And they're like,
She's
and
like,
it's
I already
not
have
appropriate.
one.
Not appropriate.
She's like, I already have. Yeah, I mean, it was appropriate enough, but I did the math and I was like, at most that girl is 15, at most, and I was like, wow. But she was actually one of the better quote unquote actors. But then at the end, whenever there was a girl who was the wardrobe. There was Chip and Mrs. Potts. And they had big flourishy costumes on. This girl just had like a French maid costume on and a duster. Then at the end, when everybody turned back into human, they had human clothes on, and she was I don't know that there was no visual discernment, but between when she was a mop and when she was a woman. But before that, I was thinking, how fucking funny to do a really faithful adaptation, like the movie or the animated series or animated movie. But at the end, when they all turn back into human, swap them. So like the Cogsworth doesn't look like a mustached, portly little guy. He looks like, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or like the sexy little feather duster ends up looking like, oh, hello, I'm glad to be a human again.
When you were
Mrs.
growing
Potts
up,
turns back into like a 22-year-old sex bomb. Like, how cool would that be?
When you were growing up, was there a VHS like at your grandparents' house that you just wore out because it was the one that was there?
No, because we had a good collection there, but I would bring shit.
Yeah, I know. I should have done that. At my grandma's house, it was like this was the only VHS she had was Beauty and the Beast. So I've seen that probably more than anything else. It was that and Jurassic Park, and I was like, I can only watch Jurassic Park so many times. So, you bounce back and forth. Tale as old as time. All right, let's talk about something else. Come on, let's talk about something nerdy. All right,
what do you got?
I read a comic book.
More nerdy stuff.
I read a comic book. I read the first collection, the first trade paperback of Sandman, and I had never read it before. Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Way ahead of its fucking time.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And the fact that they're making like an HBO show of it now is like perfect timing, guys, because they were doing back then what like Peacemaker did now. And even though Sandman is not a comedy, it's like, here's a character within the DC universe that's like floating behind the scenes and like skirting around and taking like shitbox characters that nobody gave a fuck about. Dr. Destiny, nobody gave a fuck about that guy back when he was in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And then suddenly like Neil Gaiman's like, hey, can I do something with this guy? And they're like, sure. And he turns him into one of the most horrifying villains I've ever seen in a comic book.
Yeah.
And, he meets up with John Constantine and doing all this like side door, parallel universe sort of Forrest Gumpian shit where it's like this was happening in the main comic books, but Sandman was here off to the side. And for those of you who don't know, like the basic premise is this cult tries to capture death, and they have a way to like kidnap a god, and they do the ceremony, but who appears in their trap isn't death, it's dreams, the god of dreams. It's the Sandman, and they steal his shit and they lock him up for 30 years. And while they have him locked up, like everybody's having fucked up dreams or not dreaming, or things are just wrong because he can't give people good sleep, or the good things that dreams do as well as the bad things that dreams do. So then the cult fucks up and he escapes, and his like revenge to the guy who did it, the guy's son, because he's the only one who's alive now, is he gives him the eternal wake, which is that thing in movies where somebody's like, oh, I just woke up from a horrible dream. I'm still dreaming horrible. And then they wake up again. It's like that, but forever. Like he's trapped in that loop of waking up with a start and then horrible things happening and then waking up and then horrible, fucking creepy and cool. And then he goes on and like finds John Constantine to try and get his shit back. And they have all these like very interesting, just really interesting comic book tropes and really interesting approaches to how to show these high concepts. Like when he's in the dream world, it's all these interesting characters. Cain and Abel are there, and they're these little like elves that keep killing each other, which is cool. There's dragons and gargoyles, which is cool. And then Dr. Destiny, they go to Arkham Asylum and they're like, Dr. Destiny's been locked up forever. He can't dream. And this character, I guess in the past had a gun that could shoot nightmares at you. And it basically he's a low rent Scarecrow, and Scarecrow's in it, who's like kind of makes fun of him for being that. But because he's been locked up for so long and he hasn't dreamed, he's like rotting away. He's like a skeleton, a creepy zombie guy now. And he escapes Arkham with the help of Scarecrow and just goes to this diner. He's like, I'm going to wait till the Sandman shows up. And he starts doing this thing because he has this ruby that belongs to Sandman that can make dreams come true. And he starts just fucking with the 12 people in this diner. And it's just done hour by hour. And he basically makes them worship him, makes them fear him, makes them like do this like gross orgy, start stabbing each other and cutting each other's to pieces until he's like, I'm done having fun with you guys. And like, just in that span of time does the most horrific shit. And it's like, holy cow, that's fucked up. But then he's like, time to boost the signal. He starts, everybody all over starts doing shit like this, and Sandman shows up and tricks him into failing. But it's like something, it's a superhero thing you've never seen before, and I was so impressed with it, and I just thought it was so cool. And people are like, oh, it gets better. Well, I can't wait to read it, but the first one was a pretty
That's
damn
one of the
fun
most
outing.
infamous issues or stories from the whole series is that diner one. That's like a really big taughted one because it is like every great Twilight Zone, every great, almost, that's not Hitchcockian, but it's like that issue alone could be its own movie or its own TV show. And at the end, like, what's the actual resolution again? Do you remember?
So when the Sandman finally shows up, like all the people in the diner are dead. Sandman shows up and he tricks him into going into the dream realm. Mm-hmm. And he tricks him into destroying the ruby. And by destroying the ruby, because it was created through Sandman, like splitting himself, he's like, I'm so powerful, I'm going to put part of myself in this stone and part of myself out here. But he's weak now because he's been trapped for 30 years. So when he tricks him into breaking the stone, it gives him part of his power back, and then he traps him in a void, like and when
the bad guy just gets trapped in a void.
Yeah.
Can't he dream or something like that finally or something? Doesn't he? Like, I thought it had like a peaceful resolution for him.
He basically sends him back to Arkham. He's like, you can sleep now.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? So like, it's almost like a sympathetic thing to that character where you're like, he doesn't get vanquished. He doesn't get like tortured. He doesn't have eternal waking. Yeah. He's like, okay, you can go dream, idiot. It
was so weird because up until that point, you're like, oh, this is kind of dark and weird and, very goth. But when he shows up, when Dr. Destiny shows up, it is so dark. Yeah. And like, I'm talking like Killer Joke level, like fucked upness where you're like, damn, comic books got real dark. But I think it's so cool because, I know in other things, like he skirts around the outside of sort of the paranormal world of the DC universe in a way that like no other characters get to do. And I think that's a very interesting approach. And it'll be very interesting to see what they do in like the TV show. And like, are they going to be able to do that shit where like he teams up with John Constantine and Swamp Thing? And like, are we going to get to see some of that interesting sort of outlier DC stuff, which I think could be very successful? We'll see.
It'll be interesting. And Neil Gaiman's one that I've always liked because there were some big names like Grant Morrison who really make you think outside the box. But sometimes it's just so fucking esoteric that for me, at least, and I'm just speaking for me, it loses my interest because I'm reading these things for enjoyment.
Alan Moore.
Yeah, but I mean, him I usually like, but there's times where they're just like, let's deconstruct everything about everything. Or Grant Morrison, I feel like, is always like, let's talk about this one character that was mentioned 60 years ago in the backstory of a Batman villain, and I remember him, and if you don't remember him, you're not really going to care, and that's fuck. Neil Gaiman, I feel like, does some really outside the box, real good deconstructions, but they're pretty accessible, and it's not like it doesn't. Sometimes that shit feels like reading a textbook, and like there's so much exposition and backstory just to get you to understand where we're at currently. I feel like Neil Gaiman doesn't do that, and also the world building in most of his stuff, but certainly in Sandman. And he's been with a bunch of different artists through the years that really did some great work for that world, But yeah, man, I wholeheartotly agree. I love that story. I've read first 12 maybe issues or something in a run, and then pot shot different stories specifically that I heard were really good.
When the show comes out, I'm sure they're going to re-release the omnibuses and stuff, and I'm going to pick those up for sure. He's one of the guys I quote Neil Gaiman a lot. He has one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it was from a graduation speech that he did. And he said, it's life is, you're climbing a mountain and you want to get to the top. and you always want to pack your own bags. Don't pack the bags of somebody else, because you get stuck in that a lot. Like in your life, you'll be helping someone else get to the top and not get anywhere yourself. So make sure you're always packing your own bags and not doing it for someone else. He said you can always go sideways and you can always go up, but never go backwards. He's like, parallel moves, you have to, because there is no straight path. I was like, that makes sense. I said, there's 3 things in life. You want to be on time, good at your job, and pleasant to work with. But here's the secret. You only need 2. If you're always on time and you're pleasant to work with, you don't need to be the best at your job. If you're the best at your job and you're on time, you don't have to be pleasant. And I was like, that's very interesting. And he was like, but if you're the best at your job, but you're not pleasant to work with, the second you mess up, you're out of there. So I always want to be on time, and I always want to be the most pleasant person to work with, because then I don't have to be that good at my job. And I was like, that's me to a T, 100%. Oh, you nailed me. Because like, that's true. It's like, there's lots of people who are better, maybe are better artists or better at what they do, but like, I'm going to be a nicer guy than them, and I'm always going to be on time. And like, there's those, and it's simple things like that. But that's one of my favorite quotes, and that speech is one of those ones that I'll re-listen to at least once a year, because it's so good. And that's like probably one of my biggest inspirations in my professional life. Thanks, Neil Gaiman. Yeah,
I like that. And not to undercut that, but one of my favorite quotes is from an all-star from a small village. And he said, there's a beast with great fangs, razor sharp ones, killer raws in a feast. And what I just did was better.
Rumi, we're just going to have to put on... Gosh, it disturbs me to see you, Gaston, looking so down in the dumps.
Every man wish they could be you, Gaston.
Even when taking your lumps. No, we can't do this. Stop it. All right. What else did you see? Give me something nerdy.
I read a comic.
I saw a middle school rendition of...
and it was bad.
Les Mis. There's Jean Valjean. Blah, 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 blah.
Totally missed the subtext. I read a comic as well.
Okay.
I actually have it because I finished it last night. Alien Bloodlines. It's the first Marvel.
I'm nervous.
Did you read it?
Really nervous. No. I saw that it was a thing, and I was so nervous, because if they're even like, it's my same problem I have with Star Wars. It's like, hey, here's new Star Wars. Oh, Clone Wars is still a thing, and I'm like, I hate you. How Prometheus was it?
No, they mention it a little bit, and it is, without explaining it, I don't want to spoil it in case you read it. It is like, it's important to the story. Like, this could not happen without Prometheus, theoretically. That being said, it's not like they're not like Prometheus. The whole story is not trying to get you to buy Prometheus or get you to accept Prometheus.
Yeah, but does it have like fucking fake ass face huggers and shark face xenomorphs and bullshit?
No, it's Alien. It's Alien and aliens. In fact, the story starts, in my opinion, off really good. And if you want, I'll give you details. But if you want, okay. So the story, you're following the story through this old company man who used to be a soldier, and now he's a Weyland-Yutani company man. He keeps having flashbacks to a botched alien fight 20 years ago. In that, and this happens like in the first couple pages, you keep seeing a POV from inside a hyperspace pod, and the word alien inside is written on the outside. So you're seeing it backwards. So theoretically, you're wondering, okay, is that his flashback? Is this whatever? And he sees some flashback of the Black Nightmare of, aliens. And there's this weird alien lady, and he keeps feeling her calling to him. And then he wakes up. And the whole story, he keeps having flashbacks to this old mission. He gets fired / let go from the company ceremoniously. He tries to make amends with his son, who he was never there for because he's a company guy. The son ends up being part of a saboteur terrorist group that goes up to the space station that he was just let go of to try to save / let go a bunch of specimens that they've been working on. Obviously turns out to be aliens. That shit doesn't work. So the company sends his dad back to go get a specimen. So it's kind of like the company's like, you go get the specimen and you can save your boy if you want. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go get the boy, but save a specimen too. So then they go back up there. He goes up there with like 2 soldiers. And then, they're in the space station. The character development at the beginning and the flashbacks and like why does the son hate the father? Why does the father feel need to make amends? It's set up in the first 2 comics. I was pretty interested to see where they were going with it. And then it didn't really go anywhere super amazing, but like not bad. The storytelling was good.
Is this species looking goddess thing, is that real? Is that now canon? What is that?
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, so spoiler alert if you haven't read it. Well, so the rest of the story, the 6 issues I have here in this trade, were good, but it's just aliens. It's just, these people had to go from here to here in a space station. There's a lot of aliens. They meet challenges and surprises along the way. A couple characters reveal, haha, this is a thing that you didn't know. And maybe I did, but maybe you didn't. It's written by a guy named Philip Kennedy Johnson, who's written a bunch of comics before, but nothing that I've read. I liked his writing, and it's drawn by Salvador Larroca, who's done a bunch of stuff that I've read and liked, including some recent Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about his art was a lot of his poses looked directly ripped from Alien and Aliens. Like literally, I could tell you the scene that he paused to get that stance of the alien or the aliens. But that being said, it's drawn cool. It's cool. And a lot of the action is too fast. Like aliens charging down a hallway. The Marines are shooting at them. One alien gets shot and goes down. The other one jumps up into the ceiling tiles. They sold all that in literally 3 panels. And you're like, that's way too much to happen. And I was like, maybe it was a choice to make it seem like how fast it happens in the movies. But then I go back and I think of like Kelly Jones' run on Aliens when he did Aliens Hive and Aliens Genocide. Those are my 2 favorites. They show full on aliens running, which you never once see in the movie. You never see an alien on 2 legs running like a man. But like they did that and it looked fine and I understood the action. There's a lot of like between panel 1 and panel 2, I'm assuming that this and this happens,
That's more of a modern thing though, where they're like action. Nobody wants to see action. They want to read my story. And you're like, is that the fact? Because I still will always go back to the first AVP miniseries, which is, I think, one of the greatest sci-fi comics ever written and should have been what the movies were and still should be made into a movie. Looking at you, Disney, come on. Is this movie material? Would you watch this?
Yes. And if you go by the Star Wars comparison, I would be happy. This is a step down or 2 from Mandalorian. Like Mandalorian was actually a pretty good show. This isn't pretty good. So what ends up happening is at the end, you find out that he was in this botched mission. He ended up getting a face hugger on him.
Oh.
His robot Bishop saved him and they were able to extract the alien from him in time. So he's alive. They save the alien and then make all these bioweapons from the alien. But what he reveals, and it's revealed in like the last issue, is when the face hugger jumps on your face, they don't just plant an egg in you. You kind of become part alien. So like aliens know that you're part them and that you're part whatever. And it says you not like he said when he had the face hugger on him and was attached to the wall, he not only knew what all the aliens in that hive were doing, but he felt like he knew what all aliens in the past had done, as well as in the future. So that species-looking chick is supposed to be the embodiment of a alien and human hybrid that will end up happening in the future. And then what is revealed after that is a synthetic is explaining that essentially aliens are the universe's cleansing fire. And when any sentient species like humans gets too big for their britches and explores outways and finds this new life and immediately tries to weaponize it, it ends up imploding on themselves by just taking over and leveling everything. So they say that species creature ends up being once any sentient species that has now stepped in the alien mess they start to be like, well, we can't control this and we can't stop it. Let's meet with it and let's bond with it so that we can create ourselves to be as strong as them. And that ends up with a new species of that. It was my least favorite part of everything. But that said, it wasn't bad and it was fun. The best part of it is I don't think it said fuck. It definitely said shove something up your ass. It definitely said shit a lot. And there was like human headshots aplenty. Like it was max level violence with red blood and pieces of people. There's a chest burster shoots out of a guy's chest and they put like a containment unit down on his chest and the chest buster goes back into the chest and pops out the guy's face. So his teeth and his jaw and everything are flying out. So for me, I'm very excited to see where it'll go because it is not the Marvel/Disney version of Alien I was afraid we'll get. So like, even though I don't necessarily want you to be bonded with an alien because you had a face hugger on you, like I'll allow it. Go ahead. You want to do a new thing with the story? That's fine. They introduced a new alien at the end that was kind of like a king alien, which I didn't much care for. But again, that's how we've seen that 1,000 times, right? All the Kenner aliens were like that. Gorilla alien, bull alien, scorpion alien.
But whatever. I like that stuff. That again, the ecology made sense when you do it that way. And
correct.
I think it works. And like we had a whole era of really good alien comics. Like you said, what was your favorite one?
Hive and Genocide were my two favorites.
Those are so good because we're not trying to do anything new. We're creating new scenarios from the same thing. We're not trying to expand the universe. And even AVP, which is my favorite of both the Predator and the Alien comics, it showed a couple new things and ideas about how like Predators work and how aliens work, but it didn't expand us in a way that's like, ooh, I got to blow your mind. And I feel like
right.
I feel like now people are so concerned about retreads. Instead of doing something well, they want to blow your mind.
Right.
It's like, I don't need that. And in fact, but at the same time, I do respect big swings for the fences. So it's like, I'm really torn. I'm really torn on that because on one hand, it's like, I want people to swing for the fences and do cool stories. But at the same time, it's like, why do you need to tinker with how the alien works? And that was one of my biggest things is you have a perfect ecology and one of the coolest creatures. Why do you need this weird hybrid thing? If it was just a dream and that's like some weird visual shit, that's fine. Totally cool. Because like visually, the way it's drawn is other H.R. Giger inspired stuff. Very species. Like I said, it looks like a species thing. Very cool. I bought the book. I'm going to check it. I just bought it right now. Bought one for my bro too.
No, it's worth. I mean, whatever as long as you didn't pay like a shit ton, it's worth the read. It was a good read. You know what? And two, it felt aliens. It felt aliens. You know what I mean? It looked aliens. It felt aliens. There was that perfect thing of like, this person has this gun. This person has a pulse rifle. Okay, cool. But it was very much like the same beats as Aliens, but
I loved
that's fine, especially
Alien
for the first
Pig
issues.
It's one of my favorite ones.
Which one?
Because Pig, it's literally just like a pig is on a space station. They're going to eat them, or they're going to like breed them on a planet, and like everyone on the thing is dead except for the pig and the alien. And the pig's like, "Whoa, aliens! Uh-oh!" And it's like, and the alien's kind of into it. He's like, "Oh, hey, you're a different creature. I don't know what to do with you." I love the ones that were like, "Hey, we're going to do a story from a different perspective," or we're going to do, the ones that because literally you look at the whole Alien franchise, and the first movie is a gothic horror thing, and the second one's a shoot 'em up action film, and it completely changed. Like there's a flavor there that is now like some of them are all military action, and some of them are like very deliberate gothic horror, and I think it's always interesting what people choose to do with that, and like what people want to see in that, and like what people want to see in that in like a video game, and especially when you have the H.R. Giger inspired art, like how you draw that, how you display that. So I'm excited to check it out, but again, like I don't think you need to change the ecology ever again.
I agree, and like
Prometheus already fucking took a dump on it.
I agree, but it's like the best part of it is for me is, I feel like you can't do a PG or even really a PG-13 alien or aliens. It just doesn't work. Same with Predator. You might be able to do it, but I feel like you're hamstringing yourself before the race starts. But the fact that this you don't need bad words, but it helps the situation. Like it makes sense. and the blood, and like, because there's a couple times where a human betrays another human, or a human storms in on guards and shoots they got fucked up. And like, that's why I'm reading action. That's why I'm watching action and sci-fi. I don't want everything to be safe. I don't want Punisher to, let the drug dealers off with a warning so that they could go tell the guys that they're working for. Even if that makes sense in the context of the story, it's not right. I'm reading a Punisher comic. So I feel like when I watch an Aliens comic or Aliens movie, I want to see fucking guns. I want to see shooting. I want to see people get killed by the aliens. That's part of it.
But I feel like the first Alien film was practically PG-13. If it wasn't for the language and then one scene where a chest burster pops out, that movie's pretty bloodless.
Yeah, I think that's true.
That movie's scary as shit, man.
But I think what you brought up was two good things, right? One, the gothic horror, and two, the action. And with this one franchise, this one property, you could go either way. Yeah. For me, I'm going to cut that 50-50 more or less. I like my Alien Isolation, where you're the plot is sneaking around and not getting caught by the alien. And then I also like, all right, let's bring the fight to them. There's multiple aliens. They're expendable. We can keep bringing them down.
Well, here's the other difference. Let's take the fight to them as fantasy. Like that's American fantasy. Hey, we got the guns, we got the muscle, we can fight a force. Whereas I feel like the reality is, if something wants to come for you and kill you, you're fucked. And that's like a human issue that I think is just a human, innate human feeling. It's kind of like the primal fear is that even though we're like, yeah, we're the top of the food chain. Yeah, you go out in the jungle and a tiger wants to eat you, you're fucked, dude. I don't care what food chain. He doesn't give a shit. Like, a shark is going to eat you. Like, humans are super fragile. And the only reason we're technically the top of the food chain is when we have enough of us. So it's like that whole fantasy of like, yeah, we're going to fuck up aliens with our big guns and our muscles and our attitude. That's just so fucking, I don't know, cheese dick American. And I'm here for watching it.
Well, that's what it is. That's what it's supposed to be, right?
But like the reality of like, oh my God, I'm trapped in a space and I cannot confront this. There's no possible way I'm winning unless I'm smarter. Unless I'm smart enough. Like this thing isn't. I wouldn't say the xenomorph is stupid, but
how can they cut the power, man? They're animals.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. So I really like. I like both sides of that coin, and it's when done right, it's super cool. But I also feel like you can kind of get bogged down in the action, and you can get boring with the talky horror. So it's like they both have their pitfalls.
Yeah, for what it's worth, this book was certainly not boring. It may have touched upon a couple of things that opened some doors that not my favorite, but like it looked good. It was fun. I'll sign on for the next 6 issues and see where we're at. But it was like people's, again, with the Star Wars comparison, it's new aliens content that fits into the view that I have of Alien more or less, and was fun. So like, great. Make 1,000 more comics like this,
The most cliche thing in parasitic horror. Oh my God, when it was sucking on my brains, I could see their whole plan, man. How many times have we seen that? It's so cheesy.
1,000. That's a billion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It had some cool moments, some cool gore, some cool fights. I almost wish there was more story time, because I feel like it was like exposition. Then they got there to try to find the alien specimen as well as the sun, and then it just turned into aliens, and there was like not much more development. But not bad. I liked it. It was good.
Nice. So I've been on a huge fucking kung fu kick, and in the past month or two, Kate and I have watched at least 30 of these things. Like every single night.
You know that you've watched enough when you guys like walk by each other and make noises and fight each other. Have you gotten to that point yet?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's always like, did you insult my kung fu? You killed my master. Like they're all the same plot. They're all real cheesy from the 70s, but I love them. I don't know why. They're just so fun to me. And I've been watching just a crap ton of them, and one of the ones I want to bring up was one I had never seen before, and it's from 1970. It's called The Heroic Ones, directed by Chang Chen. How do I pronounce this guy's name? Che Chang, Chehchang, and he revolutionized kung fu films by adding blood bags. So these are the ones where like the blood starts spraying everywhere and like everybody's like super covered in red paint. It is tempera paint red.
Yeah.
But this one was crazy because I've never seen a body count like this ever in any movie ever. The biggest body count I think I've ever seen. The heroic ones. So it takes place in like during the Tang Dynasty, and there are these magistrates who are getting their asses kicked by these other bad guys, and so they've hired like some mercenaries who they keep calling barbarians. So these guys are rougher, and all they want to do is drink and party and fight. And you're like, cool. And these guys show up, and it's a king and his 13 general sons who are his sons. And they all go by the name 13th son, 12th son, 5th son, 11th son. And you're like, oh, nice. Cool
Keep that
name.
shit straight.
Yeah. And they're all badasses, like super badasses. And the people who hired them are like, well, okay, we don't know how to control you. And you're kind of like scary badass. So we're going to start betraying you once you have too much power. And so it's like this whole like intrigue and betrayal and shit like that. But there's scenes where these guys go in on secret missions and they start fucking up dudes 100 at a time. Like you'll see like 3 guys fight like 300 people. And like they one of them's got a spear and he's fighting off 50 guys at once. I kid you not. Like, and kills them all. Just like blood everywhere, knocking people down the steps by the dozens. And you're like, they're superhuman. It's over the top. And like, of its era, so it's 70s style like kung fu fighting, which is very rhythmic, ching, ching, ha,
right.
Ha, pip, pow, pa. And you're like, okay, not as fluid as you'd enjoy, but still, I'm here for it. I just watched you kill like 100 and 200 guys in like one scene. Awesome scenes where they're like lighting shit on fire, shooting fire arrows. And it's like, I work on a film set. I know how we do things now. It's super safe. You can't do that. If you're just watching this like, oh, those guys have fire arrows. Yeah. Oh, wow. They shot those fire arrows and those guys just dived out of the way. And I get that they're stunt men, but like you did it.
Yeah. Right.
They're like, and I always laugh at like, the beginning of Jackass. So like these are trained stunt men. It's like, no, these are guys who are just willing to get hurt.
Yeah.
Like,
they're willing to do that.
They're just willing to do that. Like how do you train to get shot at by a fire arrow? Like I understand people are like, I'm trained how to like pretend to get punched and trained how to like fall in a way that looks like I'm getting like there's training for that. But like, hey, I'm going to shoot this fire arrow at you. Don't get hit. You don't train for that. You just dive out of the way and don't get hit. Like what the fuck? So there's a lot of that too, where it's like, oh my God, this place is burning to the ground. There's like a field of tents and like 300 guys are fighting 300 guys and the tents are all on fire. And you're like, oh, that's not fake. Those tents are just burning down around you and like this big swaths of fabric like burning off and just flying into a crowd of dudes. And they're like, oh shit. Oh, we're on fire. And you're like, wow, so much blood. One of my favorite thing in all these kung fu movies is called the anguish death. And it's just a classic way for that when they die where they're like, ah, and then they like strain really hard and they go, ah, and like arch their back into the air and then like collapse. But it takes them forever to die, which I'm like, that's hilarious. It's super fucking good. And that turns into all this betrayal. It has a draw and quartering scene like you've never seen before.
Like you've never seen.
Oh, yeah. He's like, this guy shows up and they trick him into lying down on the ground, letting himself be tied up. And then they're like, haha, we've betrayed you. And you're like, nah, shit, I saw that coming. And they slice his arms and legs. And then he's in a tent and they go outside to the super wide shot. And there's like 5 or 6 horses with ropes coming out of the tent. And they go, hiya! And all the horses take off. And you see the tent get ripped apart. You don't see him get ripped apart, but you see the tent shredding, which is a cool analogy for him getting ripped apart. But then you see the tent hit the ground and just blood trails go boom out in all directions with the horses. And you're like, and like a huge wide and just blood trails just, and you're like, that's fucking cool. And I don't know. It was just one of those rad ones. And again, of its time, all of these movies has like a scene in there like, now let's appreciate these courtesan dancers, clap, clap. And then it's like, oh, I got to watch this like Tang Dynasty dance session.
8-minute scene of
8-minute scene of like Ladies dancing with scarves. Okay. All right. Well, I think I'll get up and get a drink now.
Somewhere there's a podcast going on being like, and then there's this scene where this guy gets drawn and quartered, and luckily they put a tent over him, but then the blood goes everywhere. But then
8-minute dance.
We're
scene.
treated to an 8-minute scene of dancing, and then the other guy's like, only 8 minutes? They're like, yeah, but it's Tang Dynasty.
I love it, man. It's so good. And, we've been just, you're starting to figure out which directors you like. And, I love that era. And it's just goofy, man. Goofy fun. Long ass fight scenes. Holy shit. Long ass fight scenes. Yeah. And like cool
70s.
weapons too.
This is 70s?
Yeah. This is 1970. It says it's PG-13, but bullshit. There's so much blood. Whew.
PG-13 was different back in the day.
Yeah, these guys jump out. At one point, these ninjas jump out of the water, and they have like spikes on chains, and they're swinging around. This guy gets like impaled with spikes all over him, and he's still fighting him. And he's like, I'm going to save my dad. Fighting him. And he pulls the chains out of him, and he swings them around and chops up the ninjas with it. And you're like, that's fucking cool. Blood spraying everywhere. Guys flying in there. My favorite thing is in any one of these scenes where like a bunch of guys run in, and it's like the guys in the background, they get sprayed with blood from the sword. Like the sword has a hose in it. So when he hits them, they get sprayed. But all the guys in the front, because they're running in front of the camera, you only see the back of their head. And they already have big gnarly wounds painted on them. So then when he swipes, they go, ah, and they spin around, look right at camera with like a big gash on their forehead, blood everywhere. And you're like, cool. That's a good trick.
It's so funny. We talked, and I watched a movie that had something very similar where like, oh, I know how they did that, but it did not for a second diminish my enjoyment of it. When we had Steve Johnson on back in the day, we talked about that for some of the gags in Fright Night, where you're like, there's a gag where he did a makeup on the back of someone's hand, and then he had the hand curl up. And it's like, watching that, I figured out that's how they did it, but it looks so cool. It's such a simple trick. And the fact that I know how they did it does not diminish how fun it is. And I think there's something to be said for watching something and being like, holy shit, how did you do that? There's a special type of magic involved there. But when you're watching something like a fight scene like that, and you're like, oh, there's a hose in the sword and the guy already had the wound on his face, but it looked like if you timed it right and everything and you shot it right, it looks fucking cool. And there's something to be said for knowing how they did it and still being impressed with it. You know what I mean? Like, I know that guy didn't really get his face chopped off, but how fucking cool is that? That's awesome. It looks neat.
I think that's what it is for all of these, is like there's a simplicity to it. It's like every single one of these is like, oh, you killed my parents, I'm going to go train to kick your ass later. Or it's like, oh, you insulted my school, I'm going to train to kick your ass later. Like there's always a training involved, and there's always like a bravado involved, but there's something just comforting to it because you're like, it's nothing special, but I'm here for the entertainment. And
yeah,
it's that perfect slice of cheesiness. You found that right area, and the bad dubbing helps. Like I love that. There's something very like fun about a bad dub. And because I'm like practically deaf, we also listen to everything with subtitles on. And hey guys, if you make subtitles and there's a dub, please get that shit together, because it's hilarious when it's like, wow, you're not even telling the same story. Like if I watch this with the subtitles on, I'm watching a different movie than what the dub has going on. Super wild. It's so weird when he's like, hi, my name's Steve, and then the subtitles are like, hey, what's up, I'm Bill. And you're like, completely different characters appear. Like it's amazing.
What's like Heroic Ones?
The Heroic Ones, yeah.
I feel like I've heard that one before, but
I've watched like I said, we've watched over 30 of them in the past. Like every night we're just like,
pretty
click.
Good.
Yeah. I bought the Arrow Video Shaw set, which had 12 of them, and it just kicked off a huge addiction of nonstop watching these movies. I want them all. Shaw Brothers made like, if
you want them all, you have to train, and then you have to fight all the other ones.
Then I have to, yes, exactly. You have to fight them all. And it's funny too, because like you're watching it and you're like, oh my God, these are the blueprints for so much else. Like when you watch all this, and it's because when I first saw Kill Bill, I already knew the stuff that they were referencing. I already knew that this was just a rip-off mixtape of other movies that have existed. And the more I've watched them, the more that doesn't help. Because, like, so you have a character, he plays Pai Mei in the movie. Well, there's the movie where he fights Pai Mei, and he's, the young guy. He was the original character to fight Pai Mei. And you're like, well, holy shit, like, this is where all this came from. And you see where all it came from. There's a movie called Dirty Ho. Dirty Ho is what the title looks like.
That's like the original title of your middle school production.
That has like really unique choreography because it's one of these movies where like there's almost no fight scenes in it because he's like this secret undercover. Everybody's like trying to secretly kill him. So they're like, drink this tea. And he knows it's poison. So he's like, I won't drink the tea. So they're like kung fu fighting with a teacup, not dropping the teacup and like pretending not to fight. And it's like, that's clever. But then it's like we watched Legend of the Drunken Master with Jackie Chan, which is awesome movie. But they do a couple of the fight scenes from that movie where they do some of the similar fight scenes. And it makes sense. It's the same director and Chai Ling Lu or Lau Kar Lung, whichever name you pick. And but he's reusing some of the cool choreography from it. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. That's awesome. The hardest part about all this, because you try to learn who's this director, who's this actor. They have like 3 different names. And depending on whether it's the Chinese version of the movie, the Hong Kong version of the movie, or the international version of the movie, they have different names. So like Gordon Liu is a famous, he's a real famous actor, but he has like, depending on where you see him in America, we're like, oh, Gordon Liu. Yeah, he's in that movie. But like he has a different name and then a different name in Mandarin. And you're like, oh, this is so hard to keep track of everybody's name. Fuck.
The Uncle Monkey is Uncle Monkey in every movie, though.
Oh my God!
I meant to look
my
that
wedding
movie
tackle
up the other day to try to find.
So, my buddy Dave Paul, big shout out to Dave Paul in the Wu-Tang Collection. It's a streaming app. If you guys like Kung Fu, this is an unpaid pitch. Check out the Wu-Tang Collection official. It's a Kung Fu app. But my buddy Dave Paul was like, hey, you like Kung Fu? I was like, hell yeah. We were working together, and he's like, here's a bunch of these like crappy ones on DVD, and if you like Shitty Movie Sunday, you should do it. So I brought it over to Shitty Movie Sunday, and one of the ones was like roller skating ninjas fight Uncle Monkey, and we were like, done, sold, put it in the DVD player. Like, do it. We don't even.
Uncle Monkey has to buy the golden banana. It said.
Yeah, but there's something about roller skating ninjas.
Oh,
too.
it definitely said. It said opening with roller skating ninjas.
Yeah,
it was supposed to be the very first thing.
No roller skates. Uncle Monkey was in it, but like. Halfway through the movie, you could tell they're like, fuck this monkey. He can't act for shit. And like, there's something like, oh no, Uncle Monkey got killed by a snake. And like,
oh yeah. I forgot about that part.
Halfway through the movie, they're like, nah, we really don't need an Uncle Monkey in this movie. It had some of the most hilarious.
Uncle Monkey was an actual chimpanzee. If we haven't made that clear, he was an actual monkey. There
was a real monkey in this movie for quite a bit of the movie, but like literally halfway through, they're like, nah, get this monkey out of here. And they're like, he got bit by a snake. He's dead.
It was like that's like truly is like a Mad Libs movie where they're like these ninjas have roller skates. They didn't really. Then Uncle Monkey. I don't think there was a golden banana, but the monkey was trying to do something. There was a bunch of monkeys ran up and bit guards in their penises, and one yells out, "Oh, my wedding tackle!
My wedding tackle!" Yes. So weird. What
like that was an attack movie. One army used on another was to release monkeys that bit penises, I guess.
I also don't remember if the movie was good, but it was hilarious.
Oh, we laughed like crazy.
Like I don't remember if there were any like good fight scenes or anything,
Well, the movie opens with a fight scene that like the transfer was fucked. So you're literally looking at like just under someone's jaw down to like about their waist, and you're watching them fight, but there's no context for anything, and they maybe were on roller skates, but we couldn't see that. It won the vote unanimously, but I think we were kind of missold on it.
That's true. It's true. What else you got, Rumi?
I got one more. It's a quick little one.
Okay.
Weeks ago now, I watched a movie called Windfall on Netflix, 2022, and it has Jason Segel, Jesse Plemons, who's the squinty-eyed guy from
married to Mary
Bad.
Jane from the original Spider-Man movies.
Who was it? Mary Jane?
Jesse Plemons is married to the woman who plays Mary Jane in the original.
Is he really?
Yeah.
That squinty guy?
Yeah, what's her name?
Now that you've said it, now that you don't know, I don't know. I'll think of it in a second though, because I see her. My dad calls her dog face, which I used to agree with, but I don't think.
No,
now I think that's a little
Kirsten
hard.
Dunst is very cute.
Kirsten Dunst. Well,
yes, Kirsten Dunst is very cute.
I just watched Spider-Man 3 the other day. She's not a good act, at least in that, not a good actress, and she also wasn't very cute in that.
Well, I don't know about her acting chops, but I think she was great in Fargo 2, and that's where she and Jesse Plemons.
Revenge.
Yep. She and Jesse Plemons played a married couple in that movie, and they met and they got married in there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, this movie, it looked like, so the summary, and I'm looking on IMDb, the summary on Netflix said something to the effect of: a man breaks into a tech billionaire's empty vacation home, but things go sideways when the arrogant mogul and his wife arrive for a last minute getaway. And that was like, sounds like I've seen that home invasion movie before. But Netflix did that thing where it's like, oh, you've stopped on this movie momentarily, let me start playing it for you. And it was Jason Segel sneaking around a house, and then that couple walks in and he has to like hide. And I was like, okay, interesting. So I watched it. Pretty good. But one of those movies that for numerous reasons, I have no idea where we would put it in our blockbuster. It was Hitchcockian at times. It was suspenseful at times. It was comedic and possibly black comedy at times. But it overall did not have...
Like Damon Wayans black comedy, or like...
When I said that, I was going to make that joke, but I was like, nope, don't. It's just, there's too much to talk about already. Jason Segel's just walking around this like beautiful villa. It's a little house in the middle of a desert with like an orchid and stuff. He's eating, the movie starts with him eating shit off of the trees, and he's sitting at their pool. Then he walks inside, he pees in their shower, which is the first time, if you haven't read the thing, that you're like, oh, maybe he doesn't belong here. And he's looking around. He finds a box that has a gun in it, I think, and some cash. And then as he's about to leave, these two people come in, and it's this woman who's married to the director, and the director was Charlie McDowell, and Jesse Plemons, who I love him because he's so good at that role, because he doesn't play a likable character, right? Like, he just doesn't have a likable face, and he's good at playing a non-likable character. They walk in, and we know that their marriage is on the rocks, but they're trying this getaway, and they very quickly like undercut each other a couple times. And Jason Segel, he sees the woman and he goes, shh, and he starts to leave, and she yells, and he runs up and grabs her, and Jesse Plemons comes out and he's like, okay, sit down on the couch and I won't hurt her. And from there, it goes into this thing. Jason Segel never gets a name. He's credited as nobody. And I actually think the mogul also isn't. We don't know exactly what he does, but he's like a Bill Gates type character. And we don't know why Jason Segel was at this house. It could have been random. It could have not been random. And Jason Segel, like, clearly doesn't want to be taking a hostage. They offer him money and watches and stuff. Jason Segel does a great job as this like nervous. It's almost like I can't think of a something to compare it to. But you don't know if he just wants to get out of there or if he's going to snap and hurt somebody. And it gets a little creepy at times, and he does a really good job of it. He just wants to get out of there at first. He locks them in their sauna with like chairs and stuff. He barricades it, and he runs to his car. And as he's about to get in his car, he sees that there's a video camera pointed directly at his car. So he's like, fuck, I need that. He goes there, and they say, we can't, that goes to a server. We can't just give you a tape. And the whole time, Jesse Plemons like above it. Like, he's like, you have not thought this out, have you? And it almost seems like Coen Brothers-esque a couple times, where it's like, oh, this is going to be like a fun romp where the hostage taker and the hostages kind of don't know what to do with each other. But then shit gets serious a couple of times. It's just tonally and atmospherically kind of hops around, but not in an unpleasant way. You know what I mean? Like I kind of didn't know how to feel, but that almost lent itself to the plot.
Yeah, but I've already seen this movie. It's called Villains from 2019.
Villains?
Yeah, Villains. Bill Skarsgård and Maika Monroe sneak into a house, and the owners come home, and it's Jeffrey Donovan and Kira Sedgwick, and they're like, we'll just go. And then they're like sneaking around looking for shit, but then they find a little girl chained up in the basement. And then
This did not have that.
Shit gets real weird, and then the owners of the house are like, "You can't let her out. She's actually a demon." And they're like, "Oh,
I gotta watch this tonight now."
Yeah, Villains is kind of. I liked it. It's not great. Again, kind of tonally weird. And you're like, I don't know if this is supposed to be funny, but it's intense. It's very bizarre. It's worth checking out.
This one's interesting.
So there's no chained up demon in the basement in this movie?
I like that. I like that idea. Because chained up girl, you're like, interesting. And they're like, oh, she's not a girl, she's a demon. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Up until then, I was kind of makes sense. But
and the whole time it's like, is she, isn't she? We don't know. Yeah,
right.
But
which is an old Twilight Zone thing. But anyway, this movie is good. I liked it. And it culminates in a way that you half see coming, but not exactly. It's pretty good. Great character. It was a movie that was made for COVID during COVID times.
Yeah.
It's literally one location. There's, I think, 3 or 4 people in it and one person on a Zoom call that I don't even know if you see them. So it's all one location. It doesn't feel, it's not claustrophobic, but you definitely are in one location. Keeps its interest. Jason Segel does all of them do a great job.
Is there a bloodbath at the
end? No. I'm not even sure of the answer to that, but
I don't know if I'm in then.
It's again, like I've read a couple things about it that compare it to Hitchcock. I would say it's Hitchcockian at times, but other times very far from it.
All right. So if it's not comedy, if it's not definitely comedy, and there's elements of like crime and elements of suspense, it's a thriller. Also, if there's nothing supernatural.
Nothing supernatural, and if we had to put it in one place, I would think a thriller is the way to go. But it very much is like, it does not fit that mold in and of itself.
Thriller is a great catch-all for things that are too real to be horror and also too sexy to be a comedy.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like, I almost want you to watch it just so we can talk about it more in depth, because beat by beat, it's just like, where are you going with this now? And like, when I think about it, the fact that they stretched this premise that long without it being boring or disinteresting or being like, all right, I've seen this movie before. I know that this is the scene where such and such happens. It was really pretty good. And I don't really know Jason Segel very good, but I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. And I don't know that I've ever seen him in something serious, especially something serious where he might hurt somebody. You know what I mean?
True.
And I think that was pretty good.
I've always seen him as like a fun, goofy guy, or like a mope. You know, he's kind of or he's a character that everybody's dumping on. Like everybody's just taking a shit on this poor guy, and he's sad about it. So that is interesting. I would like to see him as a bad guy.
Very much like like an animal backed into a corner, where like he was trying to keep it together. He clearly did not want to hurt these people, but also, what's his name is just being a dick to him the whole time. And you're like, there's going to come a time where he fucking knocks him out or shoots him or breaks him or like something, right? Then, a gardener comes at one point. They have to try to get money delivered at one point. And there's a couple times, it does a good job of like, you almost got out. You know what I mean? Like that almost happened, but then one character turned around and said one more thing. And that if that didn't happen, you would have made it out. Everything would have been over, which is it does it in a good way. That's pretty tense. So I think I think it was accomplished in certain areas and certain areas not, but it was very interesting because you don't know where you're going.
Have you watched the Fargo TV series?
The first season, I think the first season for sure.
I love the first season. First season is one of my favorite. The second season is Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst and a bunch of other people. I mean, it's a whole, but they're one of the side stories where they keep piling up bodies and trying to hide it and just keep getting it.
Is it related to the first season, or can you watch the second season without knowing the first season?
It is, but you're fine.
Okay.
So
I watched it years ago.
So the second season is like a prequel to the first season. So it's the characters from the first season that are old are now young versions of themselves. So it's like, you don't need to, but if you're like, oh, I'm interested in the universe of Fargo. Okay. But it's, it's like watching a Marvel movie. Like, all right, I'll pick up. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect you, but there are some Easter eggs where you're like, oh, it enriches your experience, but I don't think you're missing anything if you don't.
Right.
The first season's better, but the second season's great. And then the fourth season's good too. Third season's just fine.
All right.
Well, let's wrap it up, guys. What middle school musicals do you guys like? What should the Montgomery Northwest Middle School put on next after Beauty and the Beast? Maybe a...
Dude, they had typos, multiple typos on the front cover of the playbill. Like,
brutal.
In the name of the school.
Brutal.
So they had Gaston and LeFou come out at the beginning and make a joke that LeFou had been in charge of the playbills, which I think was a pretty good cover, but like, come on, man.
Damn. Yeah, hit us up. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LaunchpadPod. Our website, launchpadpod.com. Check us out on YouTube. Check out our goofy faces while we talk to each other. Read that alien stuff.
I'm psyched that we got to do this in my bed. I've only laid in a bed one other time with Rumi. Twice. No, 2 times.
Yeah, once was in New York.
Yep, on a blow up bed.
Traveling. Did you like the Alien comic book? If you read it, let us know. Or is it too Prometheus-y for you? I'm going to find out. I bought it. I'm going to read it. Do you like Shaw Brothers Kung Fu? I already know the answer to that, so you don't have to tell me. I get it. Golden Harvest is way better. No argument that Bruce Lee movies are better overall, but I find something comforting in the cheesiness of a kung fu fight scene. All right. This has been great. Let's blast this thing off, Remy. All right. Until next time, we're the Rocketeers, and we're out.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.